Get out of first class. Sir, we don't serve criminals up here. That's what First Officer Brian Keller said, calmly, confidently, and loud enough for every person in the first-class cabin to hear. Before he tore Malik Jordan's boarding pass in half and let the pieces fall to the floor like lint. He didn't flinch, didn't whisper, didn't apologize. He looked Malik square in the eye and added, "You're probably used to flying coach, or jail." Then lead flight attendant Jenna Price walked up, grabbed Malik's wallet from the armrest without permission, waved it overhead like evidence, and sneered. "Let security sort out if this thing's even real." In that moment, Malik said nothing, not because he couldn't, but because he knew. In exactly 45 minutes, the same man they just humiliated would halt the flight and fire the entire airline crew, and still, none of them saw it coming. Before we go deeper into what happened on board this flight, I have one quick favor. Tell me where you're watching from in the comments, your city or country, and if this story grabs you already, if you believe in standing up to injustice, hit that like button and subscribe. It helps more people hear the truth. And today, truth is all that matters. It was 7:15 a.m. Gate C-17, Chicago O'Hare. Malik Jordan, dressed in jeans and a white shirt, boarded SkyPulse Airlines Flight 2820 without fanfare. No briefcase, no assistant, no Rolex, just a black man with a platinum boarding pass, a black leather tote, and the kind of quiet confidence only billionaires carry. But to Brian and Jenna, he didn't look the part. He looked like someone sneaking into a seat that wasn't his. What they didn't know was that Malik wasn't just a passenger. He was the CEO of Nexus Dynamics, worth $4 billion, and the 30% owner of SkyPulse Airlines. His presence wasn't an accident. He was here on a mission. A silent audit after anonymous Reddit posts exposed racism inside SkyPulse's first-class service. This wasn't revenge. It was verification, real-time, human-led, face-to-face truth. Brian scoffed at the platinum card Malik held out. "Where'd you get this? Amazon?" Jenna took it from Malik's hand, turned to the cabin, and said, "Folks, we got a forged flyer here." Behind her, a couple in row 3 smirked. One man muttered, "They always try to game the system." That's when a young man named Andre Carter, 28, sitting in seat 2A, began filming with his phone. "Injustice on SkyPulse Airlines," he whispered, and posted it to X. No hashtags, just raw footage. The reaction was immediate. Whispers, side eyes, tension, across the aisle. Owen Hayes, 33, ethics consultant, slammed his tray table. "You're profiling him. It's obvious," he said to Brian. Malik remained calm, but his mind was elsewhere. Back 20 years ago. He was 20 years old, flying alone for the first time to pitch a college tech idea to an investor in Dallas. He'd saved for months, wore his favorite hoodie and sneakers, and splurged on a first-class upgrade with the little he had. As he took his seat, the flight attendant, middle-aged, with a hard smile, walked up and asked, loud enough for the whole cabin to hear, "Are you sure you're in the right seat?" Malik smiled awkwardly, nodded, and handed her the ticket. She studied it like it was a fake, then called over another crew member to double-check. No apology came, just a sigh, a shrug, and an, "I guess it's real." The humiliation burned deeper than anything the young Malik had ever felt. He didn't say a word back then, but he made himself a silent promise. One day, he wouldn't just sit in first class. He'd own the airline. That memory, that fire, was why he stood silent now, not weak, but watchful. Back in the cabin, Jenna tossed Malik's wallet across the aisle. It bounced off the seat and fell to the floor. "Security will match it to your fake ID," she barked. Malik picked it up slowly, held his composure. "Scan the card," he said. Brian laughed. "We don't scan forgeries." Malik didn't argue. He took out his phone and called Talia Brooks. his executive assistant. "Talia," he said in a low voice, "start protocol 3. She responded instantly. "Logging? Already recording? Are you safe?" "For now," he replied. Jenna turned to the rest of the cabin with a fake smile. "Sorry for the delay. Folks, we're handling a boarding issue. Someone forged a platinum pass to sneak into this section." Malik stood taller. "You might want to double-check that story," he said. Owen stood too. "He's not lying. I saw the pass myself." Brian ignored him, reached over, and snatched Malik's platinum card from Jenna. He glanced at it, pretended to scan it, then slipped it into his pocket. "Doesn't even show up in our system," he said. "Imagine that," Owen shouted. "That's theft," Malik replied calmly. "You're wrecking Skypulse Airlines in front of witnesses." Jenna kicked the torn boarding pass under a seat and said, "Trash belongs with trash." Malik bent down, picked it up, and handed it to Owen. "Read it," he said. Owen unfolded it slowly. His voice, when it came, was clear. "Malik Jordan, Seat 1A, Platinum Tier." The cabin froze. Jenna's smile vanished. Kyle Vance, the secondary flight attendant, shifted nervously. "Wait," he said under his breath. Sofia Alvarez turned to Andre, who was still filming. "Enough," she said. "Put the phone down. Let your words be stronger than the video." Malik didn't move. He didn't flinch. But the temperature in the cabin had shifted. The quiet billionaire was done being quiet. Brian didn't blink. "Get him out of here," he barked. "He's not a first-class passenger. He's a scammer, and this plane's not moving until he's gone." And with that, he waved over Kyle Vance, the secondary flight attendant and onboard security coordinator, who arrived with nervous energy and forced authority. Kyle stepped between Malik and the aisle and grabbed his arm, not gently, not accidentally, but like someone trying to make a point. "Let's go," he snapped. "You don't belong here. Try baggage claim." The cabin gasped. The tone had shifted from humiliation to hostility. Malik stood his ground, not resisting, but not retreating either. "Remove your hand," he said. Low and even, but Kyle didn't. Across the aisle, Owen Hayes sprang from his seat again and slammed his tray table, the metallic bang echoing through the tension. "Enough!" he roared. "This is wrong, and you know it!" Behind them, Andre Carter's phone was back up, already filming again. "You're watching it live," he whispered into the lens. "This is what injustice looks like in first class." That video would ignite chaos later, but in this moment, it only added gasoline. Sofia Alvarez lunged forward, placing herself between Andre and the scene. "No more filming," she said, gripping his wrist. "Talk. Speak. Don't just record this. Change it." But Andre kept rolling. Kyle's grip tightened. Malik didn't flinch. And then, without warning, his memory shifted. He wasn't 40 anymore. He was 10 years old. Window seat, row 4. Flying back from Atlanta to Chicago after visiting his grandmother. It was supposed to be the first flight he could remember on his own. Something fun. His mother had dressed him up in clean khakis, a blue polo shirt, and a backpack with stickers on it. The airline had upgraded them to first class last minute, and he was thrilled. The seats looked like castles. But as he settled into his chair, an older white flight attendant walked over, leaned down, and said gently, but with a thin blade behind the smile, "Honey, are you lost? Coach is that way." He blinked at her, unsure how to answer. His mom, tall, proud, seated beside him, reached across and handed over the tickets without a word. The woman read them, hesitated, then walked away, whispering to another attendant. No apology, no explanation, just suspicion. And even at 10 years old, Malik understood something terrible. Even with the right seat, the right clothes, and the right behavior, he still didn't look like he belonged back in the present. Kyle's grip finally loosened. Maybe it was Owen's voice. Maybe it was Sophia's glare. Maybe it was guilt. Malik pulled his arm away slowly. "You know what this is," he said to Kyle. "You feel it." Kyle didn't answer, but his face betrayed him. Regret was starting to rise. Malik picked up his phone again. "Talia," he said quietly. "Log the physical contact. Verbal incident upgraded." Her voice came back immediately. "Logged. Corporate stream is active. This is all being time-stamped." Brian was pacing now at the front of the cabin like a captain without a map. "This flight's grounded until we deal with him," he snapped. "He's delaying everyone." Jenna joined in from the galley. "This is what happens when we stop enforcing class barriers." She didn't whisper it. She wanted them all to hear. Owen's voice cut through the cabin again. "What class barrier? He's got a platinum card, a valid boarding pass. The only barrier is your bias." Malik stood silently, letting the words echo. And then he turned to the camera in Andre's hand. "This isn't about me," he said. "It's about how quickly you all decided I didn't belong." Kyle, still standing awkwardly to the side, looked away. "I was just following Brian's lead," he muttered. "I didn't know what was real." Malik turned to face him directly. "But you acted like you did," Andre shouted toward the back. "They're watching this on X. The video's spreading," Sophia snapped back. "That doesn't matter now. What matters is what we do next." Malik raised the phone again. "Talia, confirm we've reached stage 2 of Protocol 3. "Confirmed," she said. "We're approaching administrative escalation. Would you like to trigger internal audit visibility?" Malik paused. "Not yet. Let's give the truth a chance to breathe first." Passengers in rows 2 through 5 were now fully involved. Whispers turned to open commentary. One man called out. "What's his name again?" A woman across from him said. "I don't care who he is. This is wrong." And here's where I want to pause and ask you. Yes, you watching this? What would you do right now if you were in that cabin? Would you speak up? Call it out? Or stay silent and hope someone else does? Be honest and share your answer in the comments. We read them, every single one. Kyle turned slowly back toward Malik. "Look, he began, but Owen cut him off. "No, don't explain, just stop," Brian shouted again. "Enough, I'm calling ground control. He's a threat to the flight." Malik raised an eyebrow. "I've passed every TSA scan, I have a verified boarding pass, I have a platinum card. What exactly is the threat?" "Brian?" Jenna chimed in. "We don't have to answer that. We just follow protocol." Malik smiled tightly. "You mean the same protocol that doesn't involve tearing passes, throwing wallets, or pocketing customer IDs?" Kyle stepped backward, visibly shaken. His fingers twitched near his earpiece. "I think we should just verify the card," he mumbled. "Properly. Like with a scanner," Jenna hissed. "Don't fold now." Owen stepped forward, standing shoulder to shoulder with Malik. "Too late. He already did," Andre whispered. "This is getting worse by the second." Sophia nodded. "Or maybe it's getting clearer." Talia's voice buzzed again through Malik's phone. "Audit visibility is ready. Say the word." Malik looked around at the passengers, at the fear, the anger, the awakening. "Not yet," he whispered. "Let them dig their own hole." Kyle took a deep breath and turned toward Brian. "Maybe we should back off." Brian looked furious. "You want to lose your job over this faker?" Kyle didn't respond, but he didn't move either. And for the first time, Malik saw hesitation, real hesitation. The first crack in the wall, Brian's voice sliced through the tension like metal. "Fine. If you're not gonna move, prove you belong here. Open your bank app. Right now." He said it loud, louder than necessary. like he wanted the entire first-class cabin to hear. "Let's see if you even have the money for this seat." The words were a final shove, not of body, but of dignity. Malik didn't move, didn't blink, but the insult hit harder than anything else so far. Then Kyle, flustered, defensive, tossed Malik's passport across the cabin. It flew like a frisbee and landed near a beverage cart. "Go pick that up," he barked, trying to sound firm but cracking. Passengers gasped. Sofia Alvarez covered her mouth. Andre Carter's camera was up again. "He just threw his passport," he whispered into the lens. "Like it was trash. This is going viral." But Malik didn't break. His posture was iron, his silence louder than any shout. Jenna Price, arms crossed, turned her attention to a young black woman seated 2 rows back. Kira Nelson, 22, a journalism student with a shy smile and nerves in her eyes. "You two together?" Jenna asked, voice dripping with insinuation. Kira shrank back in her seat. "No," she said softly. "I don't even know him." Jenna laughed. "Sure, but first class is getting real crowded with you people today." That phrase, "you people," hit like a whip. Malik saw Kira's face fall, her hands clenched into fists in her lap. And that's when something in him finally snapped, not in anger, but in clarity. He remembered another flight, another humiliation. Malik was 25. He'd just closed his first $2 million contract, and he'd splurged on a flight to San Diego for a conference. First class, fully paid, black turtleneck and blazer. He felt powerful. For the first time. He felt like someone who belonged in the sky. But when he boarded, the flight attendant looked him up and down, narrowed her eyes, and asked if he'd won a sweepstakes. The words were casual, the tone polite, but the wound was deep. Later, as he sipped sparkling water, the same attendant passed by and whispered, "You people really are breaking ceilings these days, huh?" She thought she was being kind. She didn't see how it shattered him. That day, Malik didn't argue. He internalized it, sat through the flight with fire in his gut and steel in his chest, but he never forgot it. And now, on Skypulse Airlines, he was staring down the same insult from a younger mouth, dressed in a sharper uniform, but wielding the same weapon, bias disguised as policy, back in the cabin. Kyle stepped forward again, trying to regain control. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to move toward the front while we sort this out." Malik said nothing. Owen Hayes stepped in. "Don't touch him again. That's assault." Kyle's hands hovered midair, trembling. I'm just doing my job." Owen turned to the rest of the cabin. "Are we all going to pretend this is normal?" A man in row 4 stood. "He hasn't done anything wrong," a woman next to him added. "He showed his card, twice. They tore it up." The passengers were no longer silent. Andre's phone was still rolling. "We've got 12 witnesses," he said to no one in particular. "And proof on video." Jenna crossed her arms tighter. "Passengers are not allowed to film flight staff," Sofia Alvarez snapped. "And flight staff aren't allowed to discriminate. Which one do you want to fix first?" Malik finally spoke. "Talia," he said into his phone. "Initiate visibility audit. Quietly." Her voice came back calm. "Confirmed. Internal leadership now sees the live stream. Would you like to proceed with escalation?" Malik's answer was cool. "Give them 5 minutes. Let's see who chooses the right side." Kyle's eyes flicked nervously toward Jenna. "This doesn't feel right anymore," he muttered. "It never did," Malik replied. "You just ignored the weight of your choices." At that moment, Brian took a step forward and shoved Malik's chest. Not hard, but just enough to break every rule in the book. "You're done talking," he spat. "You're being detained under forgery suspicion." The words were sharp, but they didn't land, because passengers were already reacting. Owen physically blocked Brian's next step. "You're done," he said flatly. "We're done." The cabin aisle became a barrier. Kira stood now too, visibly shaken but determined. "You don't know who he is," she said to Jenna, "and that's the problem." Malik turned slowly toward the cabin. "I told you before. You're wrecking your own airline." Kyle looked visibly shaken. "Jenna told us you forged the pass. We believed her." Malik looked at him directly. "And what did you believe when you tossed my passport like garbage?" Kyle opened his mouth, then closed it. The shame was written across his face like a confession. Passengers were standing now, half the cabin. Some were whispering, others were filming, but the silence from the airline crew was telling. Jenna turned to Brian. "Say something." But he couldn't. Malik raised his phone again. "Talia, please confirm. Do I still own 30% of SkyPulse Airlines?" Her voice, crisp and professional, echoed. "Affirmative. And the board is now aware of what's happening in real time?" Jenna's mouth opened, but no sound came. Brian looked like a man trying to remember how to breathe. Malik's voice, though still calm, had iron in it now. "My name is Malik Jordan. I am the CEO of Nexus Dynamics and a shareholder of this airline. I've been silent long enough, but this ends now." Owen turned to the rest of the cabin. "Did you hear that? He owns 30% of the airline. They harassed their own boss." A stunned pause filled the air. Someone whispered. "Oh my God," another said. "They're done." Andre lowered his phone. I knew he looked familiar. And now, let me ask you something directly. If you had been on that flight, if you had witnessed everything from the torn pass to the passport toss to the demand for proof of wealth, what would you have done? Would you have spoken up? Filmed? Stayed quiet? Would you have stood with Malik? Or watched him stand alone? Tell us in the comments. Because what you say now says everything about what kind of world we want to live in." Malik turned his gaze back to Brian, Jenna, and Kyle. 3 uniforms, 3 faces, all frozen in different stages of collapse. "This flight is grounded," he said, "but not by me, by your decisions." Then he looked toward the front, toward the cockpit, and said what no one expected. "You should all sit down. The next 10 minutes will decide your future." Brian Keller had clearly reached his limit. His face flushed, eyes wild with a mix of panic and defiance. He grabbed the cabin phone and barked. "This is First Officer Keller. Initiate a security removal protocol. Passenger in 1A is non-compliant, verbally hostile, and suspected of identity fraud." Then he slammed the receiver down and pointed directly at Kyle Vance. "Get him out! Now!" Jenna stood behind him, arms folded, nodding like she'd just watched justice being served. But Kyle didn't move right away. He looked at Malik, then at the dozen passengers now standing or watching with growing disgust. "Brian," he said, voice unsure, trembling, "maybe we should just slow down." "No," Brian snapped. "This ends now. Drag him out or you're out too." That's when Kyle cracked. His duty overtook his fear, and he stormed toward Malik, grabbed him by the forearm again, harder this time, and began pulling him toward the front of the cabin. "Get up," he said through clenched teeth. "Let's go." Malik stood his ground. "You lay another finger on me," he warned, "and SkyPulse will bleed from the inside out." But Kyle didn't stop. He yanked. Malik's shoulder jerked, and that was all it took. Passengers moved. Not a single one waited for permission. Owen Hayes stepped forward first, slamming his foot down in the aisle in front of Kyle. "Nope, he's not going anywhere." A woman from row 4 joined him, arms outstretched. "This isn't happening. Not today." Then Andre stood. "You're dragging a black CEO off his own flight. Think about what you're doing." Sofia Alvarez stepped between Kyle and Malik, her eyes blazing. "You want to escalate? Do it with your voice, not your hands." Jenna barked from the rear. "Move aside. You're obstructing a federal crew member." But no one moved. Instead, they formed a human wall, passengers shoulder to shoulder in the narrow aisle, standing between Kyle and Malik like guards protecting a dignitary. The air was thick, breathless, as if the cabin itself had decided to reject its own crew. Kyle's hand dropped. He looked down at his own fingers like they no longer belonged to him. "Brian," he muttered, "they're blocking the aisle." Brian, from the front, practically screamed, "Push through! Do your damn job!" Malik didn't move. He just turned to Kyle and said one word, steady and low, "Choose," and Kyle froze. Behind them, Andre shouted, "The video's already at 20,000 views. People are watching this right now." Jenna, losing control, tried a different tactic. She turned toward Kira Nelson, still seated, and hissed, "You think they're filming this to protect you? You think the world cares about you?" Kira slowly stood up, chest rising. "I don't care if they care," she said, voice cracking but clear. "But I'm not going to sit down while you tear people apart." Brian lunged forward again, but Malik raised his phone. "Talia," he said, "we've entered escalation threshold. Confirm with corporate." Her voice came through instantly, calm and direct. "Confirmed. We've entered the 45-minute breach window. Legal and board have eyes. You're authorized." Malik took a single step forward and looked Brian in the eye. "Do you know what you've just done?" Brian laughed hollowly. "You think they're going to side with you? You lied your way onto this flight," Malik responded, with quiet power. "No. I built the aircraft you're standing in. The company you insulted me through, I own 30% of it. Your airline doesn't belong to you. It belongs to accountability. And it's coming now." Kyle backed away. His grip loosened completely. His shoulders fell. Then, like someone slipping out of a costume, he whispered, "He didn't forge anything. I think we all knew it the moment he stepped on board." Jenna looked betrayed. "Kyle, what are you doing?" But Kyle didn't answer her. He turned and looked at the passengers, at their eyes, their phones, their courage, and said, "This isn't policy. This is pride gone rotten." A ripple of murmurs swept through the cabin. And now, I want to ask you watching this. If you were Kyle, standing in that aisle, pressured by your boss but surrounded by truth, what would you do? Would you follow orders to protect your paycheck? Or would you stop and listen to your conscience, even if it meant consequences? Be honest, and tell us in the comments. Because the world won't change until ordinary people make extraordinary choices. Back in the cabin, Andre lowered his phone, stepped beside Malik, and said, "You've got backup now." Malik gave him a single nod. Sofia, still standing between Kyle and Jenna, turned to Malik and said, "This wasn't just a test flight, was it?" Malik's voice was soft. "It was never just a test. It was a reckoning." Jenna tried one last command. "We are the airline crew. You don't get to overrule us." Owen turned to her. "We just did. And so did your boss." At that moment, Kyle turned to the galley, ripped off his security coordinator badge, and dropped it into the waste compartment. "I'm not part of this anymore." Brian's voice cracked. "You coward!" But no one heard him over the passengers. Now applauding, Talia's voice buzzed again. "Malik, corporate is alert. PR is standing by. Legal's approved immediate action." Malik looked straight ahead, voice steady. "Then let's begin." Malik stepped forward slowly, the aisle now clear, the passengers silent, not in fear, but in awe. The man they had seen insulted, doubted, grabbed, and mocked was still standing, calm, composed, resolute. He reached down into his black tote, pulled out a folded navy blazer, and slipped it over his white shirt with one smooth motion. It wasn't just clothing, it was armor. And when he looked up, his voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "My name," he said clearly, "is Malik Jordan. I am the Chief Executive Officer of Nexus Dynamics. And as of this morning, I still hold a 30% ownership stake in Skypulse Airlines." The words hit the cabin like a thunderclap. Jenna's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Brian took a step back, like he was being physically pushed by the truth. Kyle dropped into an empty seat, head in hands. "Effective immediately," Malik continued. "First Officer Brian Keller, Lead Flight Attendant Jenna Price, and Security Coordinator Kyle Vance. You are relieved of all duties and permanently dismissed from Skypulse operations." He looked directly at Jenna. "Ms. Price, you are also permanently banned from flying on any Skypulse route, commercial or private, for cause." The silence was deafening. Not a whisper, not a cough, just one woman near the back letting out a stunned, whispered, "Oh my God!" Brian surged forward, face red, voice breaking. You can't fire me. I've been with this company 16 years. Malik didn't flinch. 16 years? And you still think power gives you the right to belittle passengers, to rip tickets, to steal IDs, to drag people by the arm? He turned slightly. Just enough for every camera phone now pointed his direction to see his expression. You're not being fired because of a mistake. You're being fired because you made a choice. And today, the consequence finally caught up. Jenna took a step forward, trembling with fury. This is abuse of power. You planned this. You tricked us. Malik turned to her, slowly. I gave you a chance to do your job. You chose to do something else. Owen Hayes added from behind. You treated him like a threat before you even looked at his name. Sophia Alvarez nodded. And you made Kira feel small just for sitting in a seat she paid for. Kira, standing quietly now, wiped a tear from her cheek. I didn't think anyone would stand up for people like me, she said, voice shaking. But this changed something in me. Jenna's hands trembled at her sides. Then suddenly, the dam broke. Her voice cracked. You want truth? She said. Loud now, eyes darting across the cabin. Fine. 7 people. 7 formal complaints about Brian in the past year. All for bias. All for racial profiling. Passengers inhaled sharply. Kyle looked up. Wait, what? Jenna laughed bitterly. I shredded them. We all knew corporate would cover him. I didn't think any of them mattered. Her voice dropped. I didn't think he mattered. That was the moment the last thread snapped. Kyle stood. You knew? You hid those? Jenna didn't answer. But the silence spoke volumes. Talia's voice came through Malik's earpiece. Malik, board confirms full authority on site. Immediate termination privileges granted. Jenna's confession is now in the live feed archive. Malik nodded. Log it. File it under personnel breach. He looked at Jenna once more. You didn't just fail the audit. You failed the people you swore to serve. Then, turning to the passengers, he added, and for that, I apologize. You trusted this airline, and this airline forgot what that meant. Andre Carter stepped forward, lowering his phone. Not anymore. We saw everything. We won't let this disappear, Sophia added. Justice happened in this cabin today because people stood up when it counted. Malik turned to Kyle. Mr. Vance, he said, his voice not cold, but final. Your silence made this worse. You had a choice, and you hesitated. I hope someday you learn what courage looks like before it's too late. Kyle nodded. visibly broken. "I do. I see it now." Talia buzzed in again. "Final confirmation. All 3 terminations processed. PR preparing an immediate statement. Cabin feed will remain active until audit review is complete." Malik took a breath and looked around the cabin. "If anyone here would like to submit a written statement or verbal complaint, please remain seated after deplaning. Legal and media response teams will meet us on the jet bridge." The passengers nodded. A few clapped quietly, not for show, but for solidarity, for truth. And now I ask you, watching this, wherever you are, have you ever had to pretend you were smaller just to avoid being seen as a threat? Have you ever been told you didn't belong somewhere you paid to be? If so, what would justice look like to you? Would it be someone shouting back, or someone simply standing tall when no one else would? Let me know in the comments, because what we define as justice today becomes someone else's reality tomorrow. Jenna turned away, shoulders slumped. Brian sat down, stunned, like a man watching the walls of his life collapse in real time. Kyle leaned forward, elbows on knees, saying nothing. The 3 of them, so loud minutes ago, were now silent, surrounded not by screaming, but by calm. Malik adjusted his blazer. "We're not done," he said. "Sky Pulse will answer for what happened here, and you 3 will never have the chance to do this to another passenger again." And with that, he turned and walked back to seat 1A, not as a test subject, not as a victim, but as the man who'd turned a cabin into a courtroom and delivered the verdict himself. Malik remained standing at the front of the cabin, his hands clasped loosely in front of him, blazer draped cleanly across his shoulders, as he addressed not just the passengers, but the soul of Sky Pulse itself. "This flight doesn't just need to land," he said calmly. "It needs to mean something." He turned slightly, facing the remaining crew members and every passenger who had witnessed the breakdown and rebirth of accountability in real time. "Effective immediately," he announced, "SkyPulse Airlines will launch a company-wide initiative, SkyPulse Unity." Murmurs echoed through the cabin as he continued, voice steady but charged with resolve. "It will include mandatory diversity and dignity training for all flight and ground staff, anonymous complaint protection with third-party oversight, and full cultural climate audits every 6 months across all operations." Talia's voice came softly through his earpiece, confirming, "The board just approved the initial rollout. Your announcement is logged. PR is ready for external messaging post-flight." Malik nodded once, then addressed the cabin again. "An internal leadership meeting will be held this evening with full executive review of current policy. We will revise hiring, accountability, and escalation protocols, and for passengers like Miss Kira Nelson and every voice that has felt small in a seat they rightfully paid for, a public media apology will be issued within 48 hours. No disclaimers, no excuses." There was silence, then scattered applause, and finally, a rising wave of support from passengers who had been quiet until now, but who suddenly understood that they were not just flying, they were witnessing reform. Sofia Alvarez spoke up first. "That's how you lead," she said, eyes wet. "Not by command, but by character," Owen added. "This airline might finally become one worth trusting." Even Andre lowered his phone. "You didn't just stand up for yourself," he said. "You changed the whole damn cabin." But the peace didn't last long, just as Malik began turning back toward seat 1A. Talia's voice returned through the earpiece, sharper now. "We've uncovered something," she said quickly. "HR audit flagged deleted entries linked to Jenna Price's staff login. She tried to bypass the compliance filter on the last internal audit." Malik stiffened. "When?" Talia answered. "2 months ago. She pre-marked all flagged passenger bias reports as resolved without incident, including complaints against Brian Keller and herself. The full report was set to go to corporate next week. Sanitized, Malik's voice dropped to a low, dangerous tone. She was trying to fake the audit, Talia confirmed. Yes, that's what she was hiding. He turned slowly. Jenna hadn't moved from the galley corridor, but now, under a dozen camera phones and 24 stares, she seemed visibly smaller, like her own reflection was caving in. Malik addressed the cabin, voice rising just slightly. There is one more thing the passengers deserve to know. Ms. Price didn't just mishandle complaints. She altered them. A wave of shocked murmurs rolled through the cabin. Kyle sat up straighter. She... What? Sophia looked stunned. She was going to erase the evidence? Talia confirmed it on speakerphone, her voice now heard by everyone nearby. The report was intercepted. We're preserving the raw complaints and will share them with federal compliance officers. Internal ethics review is underway. Malik stepped forward again, calmer than ever. Yet the authority in his voice was undeniable. This isn't about one person's guilt. This is about a system's silence. But silence ends now. He faced the remaining staff. Every manager who approved those audits without reading them will be held accountable. Every base where patterns emerge will be retrained, and every voice previously ignored will now be heard. Owen nodded. You're setting a standard for the entire industry. Kira, still standing beside her seat, now with her head held high, added quietly, You're giving people like me something we've never had before, a reason to trust. Malik met her eyes and gave a single nod. That's the point, he said. It starts here, with all of us in this cabin. This isn't about PR. This is about responsibility, mine, and now, Sky Pulse's. He walked back toward the front, pausing only once to glance at Jenna, who now looked less angry than hollow. You didn't just falsify records. Jenna, you tried to protect a culture that harms the very people we're meant to serve. And that ends today. Passengers began to stand, not in panic, but in support. There were no chants, no cheers, just steady, respectful nods, quiet agreement from strangers who had just become allies in a moment that transcended boarding groups and seat numbers. Talia's voice returned, now warm. The board says they're behind you. Malik, full access granted, legals locked in, and press is waiting for your official quote. Malik exhaled slowly. Tell them this, he said. The skies we fly must reflect the dignity of the people inside them, and the moment that dignity is compromised, accountability must take flight first. He paused, then added, This is not the end of a flight. This is the takeoff of a new era. Then, without waiting for applause, without needing validation, Malik returned to his seat, 1A, and sat down with the calm of a man who had weathered the storm and stayed standing. Because real power isn't about who takes control in a moment of chaos. It's about who rebuilds the system once the dust settles, by the time the cabin door finally opened. The scene on board Skypulse Flight 2820 was no longer just a corporate audit. It had become national reckoning. The fallout was immediate. Brian Keller, Jenna Price, and Kyle Vance were not only terminated from their positions, but flagged for formal investigation by the FAA for abuse of crew authority and passenger misconduct. The footage from Andre's recording spread across terminals and inboxes within hours, not through hashtags or viral trends, but through people pressing send with a shaking hand and the subject line. This is why we speak up. Passengers gave their verbal statements to waiting Skypulse officials on the jet bridge. Owen Hayes personally submitted a timeline of events, along with witness accounts. Kira Nelson, still holding her boarding pass like a badge of proof, signed off on a formal complaint. Not for herself, but for every time someone like her sat in a premium seat and felt like a problem instead of a person. Malik didn't speak to the press outside. He didn't have to. The cabin had already heard everything that needed to be said. Over the following weeks, SkyPulse Airlines implemented every piece of the SkyPulse Unity initiative. Mandatory diversity and dignity training was rolled out across 114 airports. Bias audits were made public-facing. And Malik personally oversaw the internal ethics restructure that swept out over 24 managers who had enabled discrimination by looking the other way. When asked by Forbes if this ordeal had changed his leadership style, Malik replied, "No, it confirmed it. You don't fight bias from the boardroom. You confront it where it lives, quietly and often, in the aisles of everyday life." The legacy of that day wasn't power, it was clarity. Malik didn't just expose a problem. He left behind a structure that made it harder to hide one again. But the story wasn't done. Not yet. Just 3 weeks after the incident, a retired SkyPulse regional supervisor named Walter Henley reached out to the company with a private message. His voice, weathered but firm, appeared via internal memo during a company-wide ethics forum. "I protected Brian Keller for years," he said. "He was charming. He smiled in meetings. But I saw the reports. I saw what Jenna swept under the rug, and I said nothing. I chose convenience over conscience. If this is truly a new SkyPulse, let my silence be the last." That was the final twist. Not of action, but of accountability. Bias wasn't just in the air, it was institutional, and only by confession could real cleansing begin. 9 months later, SkyPulse Airlines flew differently. Not because Malik said so, but because change had roots. Every audit report was now independently verified by a third-party board. Every complaint was logged and tracked, with outcomes published in quarterly ethics updates. Crew diversity rose, passenger satisfaction surged, and for the first time in years, there were no reported racial profiling incidents across premium cabins. But Malik didn't stop there. At a quiet ceremony in Chicago, he launched the SkyPulse Equity Fellowship, a fund supporting young professionals of color entering the aviation industry, with full scholarships for training, education, and leadership development. Kira Nelson, the young journalism student from Seat 4C, was its first recipient. When Malik handed her the certificate, she didn't cry. She stood taller. "I'm not going to write about this," she said. "I'm going to change it. And now, I want to speak directly to you, wherever you're watching this. Whether it's on a bus or in bed, whether you've lived this story or feared it might one day be yours. Have you ever walked into a room and felt unwelcome before you said a word? Have you ever been asked to prove who you are, not because of what you did, but because of how you look? If you have, then know this. Silence is no longer your only option. Speak, stand, push back. Because what Malik did that day wasn't magic. It was muscle, built from years of swallowing disrespect and choosing strategy over shouting. You don't need to be a billionaire to change things. You just need the courage to make the first move. So hit like if this story hit you. Share it if you know someone who's felt invisible. And subscribe if you believe that stories like this shouldn't just be told. They should be remembered. Because justice doesn't come from the clouds. Sometimes, it takes off right from seat 1A.